If you could just give us your basis for saying that you're not going to discuss the...
Okay, so look, I understand and I appreciate, that this is a time of significant change for people, residents in Owenacurra.
Sorry, Mr. Farrelly, if there's a legal reason that you cannot talk about Owenacurra, could you just...
Sorry, am I allowed to answer?
You are, but I just want to be clear about what my question is. My question is there some specific... There's no need to be so conflict-based with me. I'm just asking you to let me know if there's a particular reason why we can't talk about Owenacurra. It would be very standard across all the committees I sit on to use examples. Okay, are you in the process of a legal procedure on Owenacurra?
No, I said regulatory
Okay,
action.
It has a statutory footing. Are you in the process of that?
In the process of?
Of some kind of a regulatory implementation?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Mr. Kieran is answering. Yes, we are. Okay, when did that commence? Mr. Kieran, you said that, and I totally accept that. My question is, between the 18th of November and the 8th of December, has the situation changed whereby you can speak to a media outlet, but you cannot speak to an Oireachtas committee under privilege?
So can I answer that, Deputy? Just to be clear.
Well, sorry, Mr. Farrelly, my question was to Mr. Keenan.
Okay, so I'm not getting into the regulatory process with an individual
Well, we're here
entity.
to discuss that.
So you might let me speak now, please.
Mr. Farrelly, there's really no need to take that tone with me. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it.
You're taking a particular tone.
Okay, go ahead.
So just to be clear, what is in the Examiner, some of the articles in the Examiner aren't necessarily what we're saying or said. There's an awful lot of information being put out in the Examiner. We get loads and loads of questions from particular people.
So, Mr. Farrelly, we're talking about a particular article now. So
we're not saying that. We're saying the obligation is on the HSE to have those things in place for all residents.
Okay.
So what a journalist takes and then puts in an article isn't necessarily
somebody did
what we say.
speak to that then.
All residents, that's the point. All residents are required to have that.
Mr. Farrelly, can you take my point?
Okay, so can I just answer? I am not going to prejudice our capability to ensure that the residents and the people in Owenacurra get the best they can from us. Can I just say, we
Mr.
have
Farrelly,
to act...
And I'm trying to get to the bottom of why. I have many questions. Sorry, can I just finish my sentence? No, I'm sorry, committees don't work that way. And you don't get to come in here and say, we're not talking about that. You have to give reasons, actual reasons.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments. Can I just say, we understand and appreciate this is a time of significant change for residents and staff in Owenacurra.
I think you said that.
Okay. This committee has a terms of reference that we've come in to help the committee.
Which is about decongregated settings, which is what is happening at Owenacurra. So it is within the terms of reference, Mr. Farrelly. I don't want you to imply to this committee that it's not within the terms of reference, because it absolutely is. Okay.
We don't want to be drawn into comment, conjecture or discussion on any individual centre, as it could prejudice any regulatory and enforcement action.
Which regulatory and enforcement? Okay. I'm just asking you to outline what the regulatory enforcement is.
I'm just saying we're not.
So you cannot provide any evidence that there is any actual regulatory enforcement. I believe you, by the way, Mr. Kiernan, that is occurring, but you cannot come to a committee and say that with no evidence. You have to provide us some evidence.
Law. Where do you think you are? Why? Hold on. Do we have to come along and give you? I am
at an Oireachtas committee that has a statutory footing, and you have privilege when you sit in here, and it is very serious. And what's happening to those people are very serious. So you can be flippant about it if you want, but it's very serious.
I'm not being flippant.
And if you're going to come in here and say you're not going to talk about it, do us at least the courtesy of explaining why.
And I do think it needs to be prioritised.
Keeping people in their communities quite crucial.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think. Okay, just because my time is nearly up, Mr. Farrelly, I don't think that's really answering the question. Do you feel that, given that you have stood over the transfer of Owenacurra residents to inferior ward-based settings, cut them off from the community, that isn't the stance you've taken on other situations? Do you think it's, to a certain extent, kind of called into question the Commission's oversight of these things? Do you think, for example, we know that families, like the remaining residents, were left distraught by your comments in the Examiner a few weeks ago, where you said that appropriate safeguards were in place to uphold their rights, and what they describe is a prolonged ordeal of being offered placements that do not meet their relatives' needs, or being consulted, etc., etc. We had all the whole thing around not consulting with the communities, deciding to, and then Dr. Finnerty, you wrote to a family member last October and said that you couldn't arrange a meeting with the families due to legal constraints, but Mr. Farrelly, you had appeared on RT's Drive Time for an extended interview on the closure alongside a family member a few weeks prior to that. And then we have the situation of you coming into the committee today and saying you won't discuss Owenacurra specifically, but you've mentioned St. Stephen's there. You haven't explained to the committee why you won't address the situation. The way you spoke to Deputy Hourigan is another issue that I just think, do you think all of this is perhaps going to call into question the Mental Health Commission, and when you want to extend your remit into community adult and child mental health teams, do you think that this is going to have an impact on how people see that?
Well, look, you have your views. I don't agree with your views. We act as well as we can within the powers that we have.
Do you accept that, as from the general public's perspective, it might call into question maybe if the Mental Health Commission is the right body to go ahead and now extend your remit into community and adult child mental health teams?
Well, you obviously have a view, and that's your view.
I'm not asking you about my view. I'm asking you what your view is on that.
Well, you seem to have a very set view, and that's your view.
Do you think that it's acceptable to come into the committee and say what you will and won't talk about without explaining why to the committee? Do you think that other bodies do that?
Yeah, I think we did explain to the committee why we couldn't speak about it. You know, we've potential regulatory enforcement action going on there, and we don't want to prejudice it. We have to, you know, we have an act that we have to apply. The act needs to be improved. We can't speak about it and prejudice it. And, you know, you were kind of given the impression there that somehow, you know, we say it in one arena and not the other. But the times move on. There's different things happening at different times. It
was the week before you went on Drive Time with another family member and spoke at length about the issue, and Dr. Finnerty refused to meet a family member a week later. So there's not that much of a difference in a week, and now we have a situation where you're speaking to the examiner but you won't speak to the committee. And I think I can only presume that you didn't quite understand when Deputy Hourigan tried to explain to you what normally happens in relation to committees. Is that the case?
I understand what's required. I think you have your views and your way of putting things, and that's fine.
If you understand what's required, then you might, Mr. Kiernan, explain when this legal action went into place or when the situation changed in relation to what the Mental Health Commission can and cannot speak about publicly and under privilege.
Just to be clear, we weren't invited here to speak about Owenacurra. I'm really sorry.
To be clear,
we got a letter from this committee about what, and we prepared our statement.
To be clear, this committee is charged with the implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, and under that convention, people with disabilities have the right to live, for one, in their community, for two, to live independently. This very much and very clearly falls under the remit of this committee.
Can I just say that you were invited in to speak about decongregated settings, and it is common practice for members of a committee to use examples from their area or whatever. So I mean, it's not that Owenacurra wasn't mentioned specifically, but no centres were, but it wasn't precluded either. So it is relevant to the topic that's under discussion.